Hi, I'm Annabelle Daily and welcome to the A-List. Today our guest is Chief Steven Stelter from the Brookfield Police Department. He's Chief of Police.
How are you, Annabelle?
Thank you for coming on the show today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So how long have you been Chief of Police?
I have been the Chief of Police for the Brookfield Police Department for about 6.5 years.
And how long have you been a police officer?
If you want to count my days in the military as a military policeman, I've been in law enforcement about 38 years.
And how did you become Chief of Police? What was that process like?
Back in 2007, the Brookfield Police Department the current chief decided that he was going to retire. So when you hire for these positions, a village or a city will put ads out in different websites and different associations. I submitted my resume and was chosen as one of a final 6 to go through a 2-day assessment center. And an assessment center is where they test you. You take various tests. You have 5 others competing against you. And what happens is you'll be in a group discussion. You do what they call a desktop exercise. It's a shuffling paperwork exercise. They'll do interviews. They'll do topic discussions on day 1. And then the second day, you have a one-on-one interview. Actually a 1-on-3, myself and then 3 other police chiefs from the area will interview the individual. And it's through those 2 days of what they call the assessment center that the village or the city will pick a candidate, or they might pick 1 or 2 that they're interested in, and then they'll continue with the interview and the background investigation themselves. So I was fortunate enough out of 85 applicants to be the one that was chosen to be the chief.
Wow. So what were you doing before you became Chief of Police?
Well, I worked for the DuPage County Sheriff's Office for 28 years before that. And I retired from there in 2007 as the Deputy Director for an Illinois State Police Task Force, which involved auto theft. So I worked auto theft for 6 years before I left there.
All right. So what are your responsibilities as Chief of Police?
Well, as the Chief of Police, I'm responsible for the entire police department. Its operations, its personnel. I am responsible for how the police department functions, how they go about doing their job, how we can improve doing our job. Unfortunately, as the Chief of Police, we have to discipline employees if there's behavior that needs it, but then at the same time we reward and we praise, and we congratulate employees when they do good jobs and go above and beyond their normal everyday job expectations.
How would you describe your management style as Chief of Police?
Well, as a manager, I like to think of myself as a kind of guy. I like to get to know the people that work for me because I really consider that we all work together. I am the chief. I'm the top law enforcement official within the department, but I like to get myself down to the officer level and get to know the officers. I get to know their wives, their families, what's going on in their life. And the reason I do that and how I do that is I talk to them. I'm not the kind of a boss that wants to sit up and only deal with individuals when I have to. I like to interject myself into their daily lives and conversate and let them know that I'm just a normal person, just like they are. We're all regular people, and I've got a responsibility for the police department. But I do a walk around thing. It's not hard. Our department isn't that big, so the walking around isn't that difficult. But I just look at it as a person that I expect officers to be accountable. I expect them to do their jobs. And I am not what you would call a micromanager. I don't watch every little thing that everybody does. That would give me a headache if I do something like that. So I expect there's people in positions to watch over the police department at different manager levels and supervisor levels. And I expect everybody to do their jobs. And if they're not, they're held accountable and they're brought back up to snuff.
So who helps you out the most in the department to do your job?
I'm sorry, who?
Who helps you out the most?
Well, I have, what I have is myself, there's myself as a chief, and then I have lieutenants that are under me. I have 3 lieutenants. I have a lieutenant who's in charge of the detective division, and he's in charge of detectives. We have 3 detectives. and he ensures that the detective division is run properly, from investigations to case assignments, reviewing all the reports, to handling money and seizures when we seize property on arrest for drug seizures or any other instance that a seizure is required. He's responsible for the paperwork. So he's got a pretty important role. He's responsible for all the evidence that's inventoried on every single case that will come our way, which is extremely important when you go to court because we have to show the proper handling of evidence. So I have one lieutenant who's in charge of the detective division. I have another lieutenant who's in charge of what we call administrative services, and he's responsible for everything outside of what you would consider police work. He's in charge of the dispatchers within the radio room communications center. He's in charge of the records department, of the civilian employees who work in the records. We have a parking enforcement officer who goes out and writes tickets every day for people that violate the parking regulations, and he's in charge of that. He's our school liaison representative for the police department, and he goes to the schools and keeps a relationship with the schools going. He's the training officer. He is responsible for all the training that our officers deal with. He's in charge of the vehicles and the motor pool officer, so he's in charge of vehicle maintenance, and when we get new vehicles and ensuring the equipment works. If the equipment breaks down, he's responsible for ensuring that it gets fixed. So he's got a lot of hats he wears as the administrative lieutenant. Then we have the patrol commander, who's another lieutenant, and he's in charge of the police officers themselves, the street officers. And you have, of course, we have 3 shifts, and we have a various amount of officers assigned to each shift, and he ensures that the schedules are met, the daily manpower is there, and the staffing. He is in charge of all functions within the patrol division. He reviews all the reports on a daily basis. If there's any actions, any disciplinary issues that need to be taking place, he's the one that would bring it forward to me. He also, in turn, if there's any praise or any rewards that need to go out. But he's also the one that gets called at 2 o'clock in the morning when there's a big call, and with the chain of command, notifying your proper supervisors with what we call a call that would be out of the norm, like a high priority kind of a call. So once again, he's in charge. So I have these 3 lieutenants who ensure that all the operations within the department are run smoothly.
All right, so we're going to be talking about some serious crime problems in Brookfield and how we can stop them and more in our next segment of the A-List, and we'll be right back. Hi, I'm Annabelle Daily, and we're back on the A-List with Chief Steven Stelter from the Brookfield Police Department. So what would you say are the most serious crime problems in Brookfield right now?
Well, to be honest with you, Annabelle, I think the most serious crime that we're all concerned about is drugs. Every community has drug issues. You can't escape it. And drugs seem to be the #1 focus that we as police officers and police departments have in combating, because, as I said, there's no corner of the world that you can go to that there aren't drugs, there aren't drug problems. And I would say that drugs would be at the top of the list.
And how has this changed over the years? How have the most serious crime problems changed over the years?
Well, I don't know that they've really changed. It kind of gets trendy. For instance, let's take drugs. You know, drugs tend to come and go. You know, years ago, back in the 80s and the 90s, cocaine was the big problem with the drugs, and that has evolved, and cocaine's kind of slipped to the side, and now we're looking at heroin and marijuana as being the big drug of choice for young people, for older people, and it's dangerous. But crime really doesn't change. It just bounces around. You know, it's you know, whether thievery is high, thievery is low, burglaries, and a lot of that has to do with the people doing them. You catch some burglars, you lock them up, the burglaries go away for a while. They get out of prison, they come back on the street, the burglaries go back up. So it's just kind of a little game in a way as to what the fashionable trend is right now.
So what can Brookfield citizens do to make their lives safer from crime in Brookfield, would you say?
Well, first of all, Brookfield's a very safe community, and the police department is very good. I'm very, very honored to be here with the Brookfield Police Department. These guys do an excellent job. But we can't do our job without the people, without the citizens. They're just as big a part as we are being out there on the street and combating crime. So my suggestion to people is just to be aware. Don't be afraid to call the police. If something looks out of normal, not normal. If it looks out of place, if it's suspicious, please call, because the slightest little call can lead into a very nice arrest. And you never know where that arrest can lead you to get the bigger fish, to get other people involved. So people just need to be alert. They need to make sure their houses are safe, that they're secure, and we just need to work together as a team, the citizens and the police department.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that the biggest crime problems among teens are the drugs as well?
Yes, I would say, if you want to talk about crime, yeah, absolutely. You know, our young people get involved with drugs, and that's the hardest thing to go to, when you get a young person that overdoses on some sort of drug, and you just think, what a waste, what a waste of a human life, that this young person got so hooked onto these drugs, and you wish you could just take it back. You wish you could bring them back and really make them realize how wrong it is. So yes, drugs is definitely an issue with the young people. So
how would you suggest teens stay out of trouble with the police and stay out of trouble with drugs and that sort of thing?
Come along and be our partners. You know, come along and help us out. Get involved in your communities. Volunteer, stay active. You know, a lot of times kids will go off on their own, or you know, maybe they're not very involved. They kind of just come to school, they go home, they don't have a lot of friends. My suggestion is reach out to these people. If you know yourselves, you kids are here in school, and you know who loners are and stuff like that. Try to reach out to them and be their friend. Everybody likes to have a friend. Everybody likes to have a kind word spoken to them. And you know, come alongside and just help. You have to realize that no good will come out of crime and doing wrong, but everybody needs to do what's right and to make the right choices.
So what advice would you give to a teen that was interested in pursuing a career in law enforcement?
I would suggest that you go to school, and you continue to go to school and go to college. Or another alternative, not a lot of people are college material. Not a lot of people are interested in going to college, but yet they still want to be in law enforcement. I would suggest a career in the military. You know, you have to be 21 years old to be a law enforcement officer here in Illinois. You graduate high school, you're not sure if you want to go to college, the military is an option. And you can be a military policeman. You can get involved in law enforcement there. So there's a lot of options, but if you're not a military person, there's explorers. There's police explorer programs that some towns have, not all towns. But a lot of towns have an explorer program they can get involved with. Maybe you want to be a police dispatcher. Police departments hire dispatchers, part-time dispatchers all the time. Maybe get involved with that until you can become of age. And so there's all kinds of different routes you can go to be a police officer. But get involved, but definitely either stay in school and get your college degree, or seek out a career, you know, in the military and then come out and get into law enforcement. So
what would you say is the hardest part of your job?
Boy, you know what, the hardest part of my job would be to see, would be responding to any sort of a call that involves children, whether it be a child abuse case, a sexual assault case. But that is probably the hardest part, is responding to and having to deal with any sort of crime or violence that's committed against a child. That's probably about the hardest thing for me as an individual to swallow.
So on a different note, what do you think is the best or most rewarding part of your job?
Is when we've done our job and we've successfully arrested a bad guy. Just a quick story real quick. I went on a call one time when I was a patrolman, and I got a call that a young girl was babysitting two small children, and they thought there was someone who was trying to break into the house. So we responded there, got there. I pulled up to the door, and as I pulled into the driveway, the three of them were standing in the front door. And when I pulled in and they saw me, they jumped up and down, and they started clapping. And as I entered into the house, the little girl just grabbed a hold of my leg and wouldn't let go because she was so scared. And so we got it calmed down, our backups came, we checked the whole house out, everything was fine. It was a windy day, there was some shutters banging against the house. They didn't know, and they thought it was breaking in. But when we left, I thought to myself, when that little girl grabbed my leg and wouldn't let go and was so happy to see me, I thought to myself that this is the best job in the world, you know, and that, so.
Oh, that's a very good note to end on, then. Thank you very, very much for being on the show. It was very nice to meet you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
I'm Annabelle Daily. This has been the A-List, and thank you for tuning in.